Hey everybody, my name's Christian Swenson. I'm a grad student at BYU in comparative studies and I have high functioning autism. So I've been doing a lot of thinking about autism recently and I've been drawing some connections, having some intuitions, making some ideas. And none of these are empirically, they are testable, I guess, but they haven't been tested is what I'm trying to say. But one of the things that I've really noticed is that almost all stems have something to do with circles. It's crazy. They do. So you can think of the stereotypical sitting in a corner and you're spinning. That idea, that's a circle. But even if you're rocking, if you go forward and back, that's a cycle. It's going to and fro. But that is also a circle because it's a cycle between here and back, and you just go back again. You go back to where you started. It's a cycle. It's a loop. It's it's that idea that you do it all over again. But and you can think of that with anything. I have a cousin who likes to look at ceiling fans. And ceiling fans are circular, and he also likes light switches. Light switches are that cycle again, on, off, on, off, on, off. People like escalators. People like trains. People like the wheels on trains. They like subways. They like... I liked infinity as a kid. And I think any stim, any obsession, for an autistic person specifically, has something to do with cycles. That's my suspicion, anyway. That's my intuition, is that they have something to do with cycles, with infinity, with something like unbounded infinity meaning without end, like a circle is without end, in a finite space. And that's what a circle is, right? It's infinity in the finite. To me, that's what autism is. Autism is infinity, infinitude. Autism is what happens when you take something infinite, and I don't mean anything metaphysical by that yet, but what I mean is basically that you take something that doesn't know its edges, and you put it in edges. What does that look like? It looks like autism. So what do you find in us? We don't have a sense of our own body. We don't have edges. We assume we are infinite. And what does that manifest as? That manifests as mind blindness. We assume that we are the universe, that we are the center of the universe, and that we are, I don't know, I was going to say we're God, but it's an arrogance that I don't think we have implicit in that statement. But what I'm trying to say is that we, as autistic people, from what I've observed, and this is a limited observation, obviously, assume that there can only ever be one center. That there can only ever be one place that is here, and that we can't imagine, or find it very difficult to imagine, that somewhere else can also be here. And so what do we look like? I mean, what do we imagine? We imagine circles. We imagine a centered place, circled around a single center. And we don't imagine squares, which have lots of little points, or triangles, which have 3 points, or pentagons, which have 5, or whatever. We imagine circles with just one center and everything bending and worshiping that center. And that's not a bad thing. No, it's not a bad thing at all. Carl Jung would call those mandalas. It's a symbol of psychological integration, of the primal unity of the psyche, of the mind, that the human mind is organized around. The problem is that we assume that we are that, but we aren't. We are a body. We are a thing in space and time. We are only one point among many. And that's difficult because we don't want to be. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that with the stems that go here and there, that go around and around and around, we are trying to be without edges in a world with edges. And that's problematic. You can only do it in cycles, in circles, in stems, in obsessions, in things that go endlessly and repetitively and compulsively and never actually get anywhere. I think it's because we resist the nature of this world. We resist the nature of the world in which I am what I am and I am nothing else. We want to be everything. We want to be something. We don't want to be something. We want to be everything. We want to be nothing in the sense of no thing. If thing, is just some limited skin bag in time and space. When I look at a mirror, and I've talked with other autistic people who have had the same experience, you look in a mirror, you feel, is that me? I'm looking at a screen of me right now. I'm like, is that me? Am I really that guy with hair and glasses. No, I don't want to be that. I'm bigger than that. I know I am. I'm a circle. I'm the universe. I am the endless expanse of time and space, right? But we're not. At least here we're not. And that to me is tragic, but it's also really illuminating because it tells us things about autism. One of the things that's really interesting about autism, as far as I know, our prefrontal cortexes typically aren't as well developed. And as far as I can tell, from what little research I've done, the prefrontal cortex, I mean, I study art, I'm not a neuroscientist, is the prefrontal cortex is basically what allows you to plan, to put yourself in imagined situations and say, look, if I were over there and if this situation were to happen, this is what I would do. But to do that, you need to make yourself a thing, something that you can isolate and put in different situations. You need to make yourself an avatar, like in a video game. You need to mass yourself into a skin bag, a body, and like assume that in those situations, I would be the same and I would not be different. Based on the situation. But the thing about autism is that we don't separate ourselves from our environment because we assume they're the same thing. And that means, in one sense, we're terribly, terribly egotistical because we assume everyone is us. But in another sense, we are the most selfless people you can imagine because we have no self. So it's that paradox. But like I said, the prefrontal cortex, we put yourself in different situations. But in those different situations, to do that, you need to kind of create a masked avatar of yourself, and we don't want to do that. So our prefrontal cortexes naturally don't have as much development. Same with mirror neurons. I've heard that by default, autistic people don't have as many mirror neurons, though there can be exceptions, I'm sure, or don't have as developed or whatever. But it's that same idea. In order to empathize with another person in this specific way, you have to imagine being her. But in order to imagine being her, you'd have to have a frame of reference to do that. And you'd have to know what it's like to be me. But I sure as hell don't know what it's like to be me. I know what it's like to be. I feel like being with a capital B. I know what that is like. I don't know what it's like to be Christian Swenson, for heaven's sake. But in order to empathize in that specific way, you need to have kind of a bodily self-concept. And that's really hard, because it's like a limitation, to me at least, or to the autistic people I've talked to, and from what I guess is true for most autistic people. So, yeah, and that's an intuition I've been having. The idea that autistic people are basically massless, or they want to be massless. They want to be without dimensions, without size. They just want to be this endless white light that is everything. And that absent that, we want to be circles. We want to be just something that loops around, that sits in a corner and rocks, or spins, or looks at trains. That does the same thing over and over again, because in that you have some semblance of the infinite, right? So, I guess that's my thoughts. They weren't very coherent, but there they are. Take them for what you will. And till next time, I guess.